Las Vegas, 2:37 a.m. The strip glows faintly under the fading neon haze. Quieter now, but never asleep. Inside the Royal Mirage Casino, the overnight rhythm hums on. Guards making rounds, cleaners gliding between slot machines, and a few die-hard gamblers chasing luck beneath dim chandeliers. Out back, behind the glittering facade tourists adore, the real work happens. At the loading dock, a white armored cash van idles in the cool desert air, its exhaust rising like smoke. It looks ordinary. Plain white panels, no flashy logos. Just another vehicle in a city where millions in cash travel unnoticed every night. Security camera 19 watches the scene unfold. Daniel Hurst, the casino's senior shuttle dispatcher, stands beside the van holding a clipboard. He's 44, with thinning hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and the calm, forgettable presence of a man used to night shifts and quiet authority. Across from him, Mike Torres, a trusted armored truck driver, checks the manifest. The two share a laugh. Colleagues comfortable in a routine they've done countless times. Daniel signs the paperwork with neat, steady strokes, hands over the duplicate form, and waves as the van pulls away. The timestamp reads 2:39 a.m. Everything looks normal. Everything is normal, until it isn't. At 3:07 a.m., the Silver Rock Cash Center, the facility that processes the casino's nightly revenue, flags the Royal Mirage transfer as overdue. A 10-minute delay isn't unusual, but by 3:15, when radio calls to the driver go unanswered and GPS shows the van parked miles off route at a quiet industrial depot, concern hardens into panic. A secondary team is dispatched. They arrive at 4 a.m. to find the depot deserted. The van is gone, the address is a dead end, and so is every lead. By dawn, the truth hits like a punch. The missing vehicle was carrying $19.8 million in casino cash. The Friday night take from 3 partner resorts, gone without a trace. And when security checks Daniel Hurst's office, the picture turns darker. His desk is clean. His locker is empty. His car is missing from the employee lot. No resignation letter. No goodbye. Just one signature on a manifest. And $19 million that vanished with him into the Las Vegas night. Before we dive into one of the most meticulously planned casino heists in Las Vegas history, make sure to like this video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more insane real-life heist stories. If you want to help boost content like this, hit that hype button now. Daniel Hurst was the kind of employee everyone trusted because no one ever really noticed him. For 15 years, he worked quietly in the transportation logistics department at the Royal Mirage Casino, showing up on time, finishing his shifts without complaint, and never giving management a single reason to worry. He started as a night shuttle driver, ferrying guests between casinos and the airport. The job was simple, steady, and paid well enough for a man without a degree. Daniel wasn't ambitious or charming, but he was dependable. His supervisor reviews were identical year after year. Meets expectations. After 6 years behind the wheel, he moved up to dispatcher, the person who coordinated all casino vehicle operations, from shuttle schedules to cash transport routes. Over time, Daniel earned the title of senior dispatcher, a promotion that came with more trust and far more access. Now he oversaw every transport operation, including the casino's cash transfer system. The movements of armored vans carrying millions of dollars in revenue. To his co-workers, Daniel was forgettable. He kept to himself, ate lunch alone, avoided gossip, and spoke only when necessary. He was polite but distant, the kind of man who blended into the background so thoroughly that people stopped paying attention to him. You could count on him, one colleague later said, but you couldn't really say you knew him. He lived the same way, quietly and carefully. A one-bedroom apartment, a 10-year-old Toyota Camry, no visible debts, no expensive habits. To anyone watching, he was a man content with a simple, steady life. But that calm exterior hid 3 years of silent preparation. Daniel had been studying the casino's transportation network with obsessive precision, mapping routes, noting schedules, and analyzing vulnerabilities. His legitimate access as dispatcher gave him everything he needed: route data, GPS records, timing logs, and security procedures. Bit by bit, he learned how the casino's cash actually moved, and more importantly, where the weak points were. The weakness he found was a single Friday 2 a.m. transfer, a routine cash run between Royal Mirage and Silver Rock Cash Center. The route was short, quiet, and predictable. The driver was always the same. The guards were always tired, and because it had never once been a problem, no one was really watching. To Daniel, it was perfect. He wasn't driven by desperation or addiction. He wasn't drowning in debt or seeking revenge. He was simply tired of being invisible, of working endlessly while others gambled away more in one night than he earned in a year. His motive was cold, calculated freedom. He spent years perfecting his plan, knowing that security systems can be beaten, not through hacking or force, but through trust. And that trust, the quiet kind built over 15 years of flawless service, was exactly what Daniel Hurst would use to walk away with nearly $20 million and vanish without leaving a trace. Daniel Hurst's plan moved from theory to execution 6 months before the heist. After years of quiet observation, February 2022 marked the point where he began actively shaping the system that would let him steal nearly $20 million without anyone realizing until it was far too late. His first move was subtle and brilliant. He proposed a project to optimize the casino's cash transport operations, pitching it as a cost-saving measure. He talked about cutting fuel use, streamlining routes, and testing faster, safer delivery paths. Management loved it. Daniel was a trusted veteran with 15 years of spotless service, and he was suggesting something that made them look efficient and proactive. They approved it immediately. For the next few months, Daniel slowly trained the system and the people to accept his control. He introduced small route changes, altered schedules by a few minutes, and explained the variations with logical reasons. Drivers grew used to him handing out updated manifests. Security stopped questioning. The changes blended into routine. Then he made his key move, a new refueling protocol. He argued that armored vans shouldn't stop at public gas stations. They needed a secure private depot. It sounded like common sense. Management agreed, and Daniel provided an address for a fueling site in an industrial area. The location existed on paper, complete with contracts and a supposed vendor relationship. But in reality, the depot was an empty warehouse, a long vacant property he had found through real estate listings. Daniel registered a fake company, Desert Star Transit LLC, complete with a business license, bank account, and realistic paperwork. He printed letterhead, made fake maintenance forms, even had uniforms embroidered with the Desert Star logo. On paper, it looked like a legitimate logistics partner. In reality, it was nothing but a shell, a false front hiding an abandoned building he could control completely. He visited the property several times to make minor modifications. He added portable lights, mounted simple signage, and installed a wireless electronic lock inside one of the rooms. From a quick glance, the space appeared operational. To anyone inspecting casually, it looked like a functional depot. Meanwhile, Daniel turned his attention to the casino's GPS tracking system. He learned its weaknesses, that updates came every 30 seconds, and that most trips were logged only in summary form unless flagged. He discovered how easily temporary data gaps could go unnoticed. Then he tested small handheld GPS jammers he'd bought with cash from a swap meet. The devices created short blackouts in location tracking without triggering alerts. Piece by piece, the plan formed. He had a fake company, a false destination, the ability to manipulate tracking, and a system so accustomed to his changes that no one would question a single document bearing his signature. The final step was escape. Daniel spent months studying how to disappear. He opened offshore accounts through anonymous intermediaries, obtained fake IDs, and researched non-extradition countries. He set up a semi-truck lease under Desert Star Transit, timing its registration and insurance to look routine. He scouted quiet points along Interstate 15 where he could transfer the stolen cash unseen, and he even identified shipping companies at the Port of Long Beach that would load sealed containers without extensive inspection. By August 2022, every part of the puzzle fit perfectly. Daniel had spent years learning how to move money for others. Now, using the very systems he'd built and perfected, he would move it for himself. To the outside world, it would look like just another routine Friday night cash transfer. Inside, it was the opening act of one of the most meticulously planned thefts in Las Vegas history. Friday, August 19th, 2022. Daniel Hurst arrived for his shift at the Royal Mirage Casino at 10 p.m., his standard start time for overnight dispatcher duties. He signed in at the employee entrance, passed through security screening without incident, and settled into his dispatch office, a small room lined with monitors showing GPS tracking displays, communication equipment, and scheduling software. For the first several hours, Daniel performed completely legitimate work. He coordinated airport pickups for arriving VIP guests. He dispatched maintenance vans to handle equipment issues at partner properties. He reviewed driver logs and approved fuel reimbursement requests. Everything appeared normal. The best cover for extraordinary action is ordinary routine maintained until the critical moment. At 1:45 a.m., Daniel made his first significant move. 2 cash transport vans were scheduled for the Friday overnight consolidation transfer. Vehicles that would collect revenue from Royal Mirage and 2 partner casinos, then deliver the combined cash to Silver Rock Cash Center for counting and processing. The drivers originally assigned to the route were experienced personnel who'd made the run dozens of times. Daniel contacted both drivers and informed them he was reassigning them to different tasks, one to handle an urgent VIP transport that had just been requested, the other to cover for a driver who'd called in sick. The reassignments were within Daniel's authority and didn't raise suspicion. He then assigned 2 other drivers to the cash transfer route, security guards named Mike Torres and Jason Chen, both competent and familiar with transport protocols, but less experienced with the specific Friday consolidation run. When Mike and Jason arrived to collect the vans, Daniel personally briefed them on the route. He handed them printed manifests showing the standard pickup sequence at the 3 properties, then explained a modification. The regular refueling station they typically used was closed for emergency maintenance inspection. A gas leak had been reported, and the station was shut down until safety could be verified. Instead, they should refuel at the Desert Star depot Daniel had arranged. He provided them with the address, already programmed into the van's GPS systems, and explained that the depot was expecting them. Mike and Jason accepted the instructions without question. Daniel was their supervisor. Route modifications happened occasionally for various operational reasons. The explanation was plausible. They loaded the vans according to standard protocol, secured the cargo areas, and departed on schedule at 2:15 a.m. The consolidation pickups went smoothly. At each property, cash was loaded following established procedures. Secured cases counted and manifested. Guards signing transfer documentation. Everything by the book. By 2:35 a.m., both vans were carrying their complete cargo, $19.8 million in casino revenue, distributed between the 2 vehicles. At 2:41 a.m., following their GPS guidance and Daniel's instructions, the vans arrived at the address for the Desert Star depot. The location appeared legitimate, a warehouse facility with minimal external lighting, but with signage identifying it as a fueling and maintenance depot. Daniel's attention to atmospheric detail paid off. The drivers saw what they expected to see, an authorized facility where they could refuel before completing their transfer run. Daniel was already there, having arrived 30 minutes earlier in his personal vehicle. He changed into a reflective safety vest over his uniform shirt and wore a headset and carried a clipboard, visual signals of authority and official capacity. When the vans pulled into the depot entrance, Daniel waved them forward with practiced confidence. Mike recognized Daniel immediately through the van's windshield and rolled down his window. "Hey, Daniel, this the new fueling location?" "Yeah, temporary setup while the main station gets inspected," Daniel replied, his voice calm and authoritative. "Pull into separate bays for fueling. Bay A for you, Mike. Bay B for Jason. Need to process you individually for the logs." The drivers followed Daniel's directions, pulling into marked positions in different sections of the warehouse interior. The layout prevented them from maintaining visual contact with each other, a detail Daniel had specifically arranged. Once the vans were positioned, Daniel approached each driver separately. "Need you both to step out for a quick safety briefing while the fueling happens," Daniel explained to Mike. "New protocol. Drivers wait in the observation room during fuel transfer. Liability thing after that accident in Phoenix." The explanation was vague but plausible enough that Mike didn't question it. He and Jason were directed to a break room in the warehouse, a small space with a table, some chairs, and vending machines that Daniel had positioned there earlier. The room looked legitimate, like any industrial break area. As soon as both drivers entered the room, Daniel stepped back and pulled the door closed. The electronic lock he'd installed engaged with a magnetic click. Mike immediately tried the handle and found it wouldn't turn. "Hey, Daniel, door's locked." "Yeah, going to be about 20 minutes, Daniel called through the door, his voice still calm. "Security protocol during fueling. There's water and snacks in there. I'll come get you when we're done." Mike and Jason exchanged uncertain glances, but they weren't immediately alarmed. The explanation was odd, but Daniel was a supervisor they knew and trusted. They assumed this was some new procedure they hadn't been briefed on yet. They settled in to wait, annoyed but not yet suspicious that anything criminal was occurring. Daniel moved quickly now. He drove the first cash van out of the warehouse, leaving the second parked inside. He followed a pre-planned route through industrial areas with minimal camera coverage, traveling approximately 3 miles to an abandoned trucking warehouse he'd identified during his months of preparation. The semi-truck he'd rented was already positioned there. Working alone, Daniel transferred the cash from the van's cargo area into the refrigerated trailer attached to the semi-truck. The physical labor was exhausting. The cases were heavy, and he was working quickly despite the exertion. But adrenaline and the realizations that he was minutes away from possessing nearly $20 million provided motivation. After 37 minutes, the first van was empty. Daniel drove it back to the depot, parked it, and repeated the process with the second van. Another 3-mile drive, another exhausting transfer of heavy cases into the refrigerated trailer. By 4:18 a.m., both vans had been emptied, and all $19.8 million was secured in his semi-truck. Daniel then executed perhaps the cleverest element of his plan. Instead of abandoning the vans or leaving them at the depot where they would immediately signal something wrong, he drove both vehicles to the Silver Rock Cash Center perimeter, the facility where they were supposed to have delivered their cargo. He parked them in the staging area, where arriving vans typically waited before proceeding to secure unloading bays. He placed falsified log sheets on both dashboards showing on-time arrival. He activated a GPS spoofing device he'd constructed, a small transmitter that sent false location signals, making it appear the vans had followed their authorized route and were now properly positioned at their destination. The spoofing would only work for a limited time before inconsistencies were detected, but Daniel only needed a couple of hours. By 4:47 a.m., Daniel was driving the semi-truck toward Interstate 15, heading south toward California. The two cash van drivers remained locked in the break room at the depot, increasingly confused and concerned, but still not fully comprehending that they'd been victims of a sophisticated theft. They would be discovered when a security team investigated the depot location after the van's failure to properly check in triggered alarms. But by then, Daniel would have hours of head start. Daniel drove south on Interstate 15 with religious adherence to traffic laws. Speed limit exactly. Lane changes properly signaled. No violations that would give a highway patrol officer reason for a traffic stop. The semi-truck was registered properly. The refrigerated trailer appeared legitimate, and Daniel looked like any other commercial driver making an overnight haul between Nevada and California. At a rest stop approximately 40 miles south of Las Vegas, Daniel executed the next phase of his escape. He'd pre-positioned another vehicle there days earlier, a nondescript cargo van registered to a different shell company. Working quickly in the pre-dawn darkness, he transferred the cash from the refrigerated trailer to the van. The transfer took nearly an hour, but the rest stop was quiet at 5:30 a.m., and Daniel had chosen a parking position partially obscured by a utility building. He left the semi-truck and trailer at the rest stop with its keys in the ignition. It would eventually be found and traced back to his Desert Star Shell Company, but by then the trail would be effectively cold. Daniel drove the cargo van south, crossing into California and continuing toward Los Angeles. Security footage later captured, after investigators had identified what to look for, showed a cargo van matching Daniel's vehicle arriving at the port of Long Beach at approximately 2:01 p.m. on Friday afternoon. The van entered a commercial shipping area where thousands of containers were being loaded daily onto cargo vessels bound for international destinations. The port's security was focused primarily on preventing contraband from entering the United States, not on monitoring what was being shipped outward. Investigators believe Daniel had prearranged shipping services through a freight forwarder that asked minimal questions about cargo contents. Refrigerated containers moving through the port weren't unusual. Produce, seafood, pharmaceuticals, and various temperature-sensitive goods traveled internationally daily. Daniel's container was labeled as commercial food products, a designation that didn't trigger intensive inspection. The shipping manifest listed the container's destination as Panama, a country known for its shipping hub status, financial privacy, and complex jurisdictional environment that made it difficult for U.S. law enforcement to pursue investigations. The container was loaded onto a cargo vessel scheduled to depart Saturday evening, less than 48 hours after the theft occurred. By Saturday morning, when the full scope of the heist had been discovered and federal investigators were beginning their analysis, Daniel Hurst had already vanished. His apartment was found abandoned, cleared of personal items, but with furniture and random belongings left behind. His vehicle was discovered in long-term parking at McCarran International Airport, a diversion suggesting he'd fled by air, though no record of him boarding any flight existed under his real name or any known aliases. His bank accounts showed minimal activity before the theft and none afterward. Credit cards went unused. Phone service was disconnected. Every digital footprint that could be traced through normal channels simply stopped. Daniel had planned his disappearance with the same meticulous attention he'd applied to the theft itself. The FBI, Nevada Gaming Control Board, and Interpol launched Operation Shuttle Stop within hours of discovering the theft. The case represented one of the largest casino cash thefts in Las Vegas history and demonstrated vulnerabilities in transportation security that had industry-wide implications. Federal agents traced Daniel's elaborate infrastructure. They found the Desert Star Shell Company, the rented semi-truck, the vacant warehouse depot with its fake fueling facility set up. They discovered the electronic lock system that had trapped the drivers, the GPS spoofing device, the falsified documentation. Every element demonstrated sophisticated planning and execution. The investigation revealed that Daniel had been preparing for nearly 3 years, much longer than anyone initially suspected. Financial records showed the shell company registration, equipment purchases made with cash, the refrigerated trailer rental. Interviews with former co-workers revealed that Daniel had spent months subtly adjusting protocols and training staff to accept his route modifications as normal. Investigators found the cargo van abandoned near the port of Long Beach, but by the time it was located and searched, any useful evidence had been removed or contaminated. Port records confirmed a container matching the suspected description had been shipped to Panama. But by the time authorities contacted Panamanian law enforcement and shipping companies, the container had been delivered to its consignee, a company that existed only on paper, and its contents dispersed. Despite extensive investigation, international cooperation, and years of effort, no trace of Daniel Hurst has ever been found. No confirmed sightings, no financial activity, no communication with family or former associates. The $19.8 million remains unrecovered. The case became known within Las Vegas security circles as the dispatcher job, a crime executed without violence, without hacking, without any of the dramatic elements typical of casino heist narratives. Just a man who understood the system perfectly and used that knowledge to reroute millions of dollars into his own possession. Security protocols were overhauled throughout the Las Vegas casino industry. Dispatcher authority was limited. Cash transport routes now require multiple authorization levels. Facilities used for any stage of transport operations are verified through in-person inspections. GPS tracking systems were upgraded with anti-spoofing capabilities. The theft became a case study in insider threat awareness. But for all the improvements implemented, the uncomfortable truth remains. Daniel Hurst succeeded. He spent 15 years being reliable and invisible, then used that trust to steal nearly $20 million and disappear completely. He demonstrated that sometimes the most dangerous criminals aren't the ones breaking into systems, but the ones already inside them, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to exploit everything they've learned.